Okay, I'll just start.
Alright.
Okay, I'm
Let's do it.
Ash, and I was the group leader in this simulation.
I'm Alex, and I was the group environmentalist in this simulation.
I'm Griffin, and I was the team physician in the simulation.
I'm Allie, and I was the marathon runner in the simulation.
I'm Matt, and I was the photographer.
So something that I think that went really well was, well, I made it to the summit, and did anyone else make it to the summit? It was just me?
No,
Yeah, it was just you.
Okay, it was just me. That's okay.
I didn't want to.
I tried getting on and stuff. That's alright. I think a couple of us accomplished our goals. Like, I think you got all
I
your
accomplished
pictures
all my
taken.
goals, actually. I got all my pictures done. I was supposed to stay at Camp 1 and Camp 2 and take pictures of something. And I got got all my pictures done, and I was able to stay alive the entire time. So that all went well for me. Those were my 3 major goals. So
Yeah, I think
Got
most of
that
us
done.
were able to like stay alive, except for
except for
Yeah,
Griffin.
yeah.
You want to talk
I
about
was.
well, no, we none of us died. He was rescued.
Yeah, I was rescued from camp. When I was trying to go from Camp 3 to Camp 4, I was rescued because I got frostbite. I guess it was kind of challenging figuring out what medical supplies was for what injury or fatigue or what used for certain things, and I think that's one of the reasons why I got rescued, because I didn't know which medical thing to use.
Yeah, for me it was challenging because every time I went up from ground base up to base 1, and my health went from good to weak, and then I went up to base 2 and it went to critical, and I kind of got stuck at base 2 for 2 nights because my energy was just so low I couldn't go anywhere.
What did you think was frustrating?
I thought that not being able to predict the weather multiple times was frustrating because that probably caused Griffin to get frostbite, and I also got frostbite. But eventually, I was able to predict it correctly.
We should also talk about it.
What would I do differently? I would probably spend 1 less day at Camp 2 so that I could have hopefully made it up to Camp 4 and completed my goal of cleaning up the mountain since I was an environmentalist. But instead, I didn't, so I didn't get to spend the night up at Camp 4, which was
Yeah, I actually would have probably actually stayed at Camp 2 and just not moved. Actually, well, except I went up with you, but
yeah.
I had no real reason to keep going, and it made me kind of sick.
I also found it somewhat frustrating trying to distribute the medical supplies to the climbing members, because I know Alex, after the first day when we all went up to Camp 1, his health went down to weak, but I tried giving him an inhaler and it didn't really seem to help at all. And then after I got rescued, some of the team members could have used medical supplies, but I was down at base camp, so I wasn't able to give them the medical supplies that they needed in order to continue on the climb.
I think one of the biggest like conflicts that we faced in the simulation was the fact that we each had different goals and different priorities.
Yeah.
That like they were often different for the team. Like for me, it was to get everyone to the summit, but obviously that wasn't a priority for a lot of you. And so we faced conflict there, but I think we also did a good job at addressing this conflict because we did talk about our goals prior to beginning the simulation. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, my role as the environmentalist was to kind of make it up each stage, cleaning up trash, and then get to Camp 4 and sort of do one big cleanup to bring all the way back down to base camp. But that required me to stay the night there, and that kind of became that was a side goal initially, and that was probably my biggest goal for the trip. In the end, because I realised I wasn't ever going to summit, so I kind of committed to that, and that was a bit of a conflict, but it didn't matter too much.
Yeah, my role was kind of like, sort of not that much part of the group because I didn't have to summit. I was basically just there to reach Camp 1 and 2. So that's basically that.
It's still recording. Screen.
So when talking about conflict as a whole for the group, I think it was tough trying to figure out which goals were more important. Because we each had individual goals, but then we also had team goals, which included some of us summiting together, some of us staying at a certain camp for at least one night. So it was tough prioritizing which ones were the most important but we were able to discuss that before we started the simulation, which was helpful.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, we did communicate with each other before each decision, and so when we got to the decision page, we talked Ali talked about which weather prediction she was going to make and the reasonings behind that, and Griffin checked in and asked all of us if we needed medical supplies, and I waited before advancing. I waited until everyone else had made their decision before advancing, and so we did try to communicate in that way. And
Unfortunately, as a group, though, we kind of ended up having to split up. Me and Max kind of followed our goals of doing sort of what we wanted to do on site. So for me, as the environmentalist, that was clean up the mountain. And as I realised I wasn't really going to make it past base 2 for a couple days, I chose to stay there for 2 nights and hopefully at least make it up to camp 4. So me and Max sort of formed this own little subgroup within the group, and we were kind of going up the mountain together from camp 2 onwards, whereas the rest of the group, Griffin, Ali, and Ash, sort of had to move ahead as they were trying to really reach the summit, and that was their main goal. So we kind of sort of had to separate a little bit throughout the actual simulation because our own goals became more clear, and we were trying to complete what we thought was more important to our own individual character.
And these affected our group identities, of course, because we had one subgroup and then another subgroup that formed between us. As for leadership, being the leader, I tried to. I actually didn't know I was going to be the group leader until I got in here and we started the simulation. But I hopefully did my part well.
Yeah,
That's pretty good. For sure.
I tried to prepare an agenda and meeting notes just even before we came into the simulation. And throughout, I tried to check in with everyone to see where we stood and if there was any confusion.
So for us, some of the norms that we had, relative to the culture and climate that we were in, we wanted to make sure that we all tried to stay together as a group, and it was all of our goals to try and reach the top at the start. But eventually, our norms had to sort of change a little bit because we all started following our own different goals. So we did, in the end, split up the team, which deviated from one of our norms. But I'd say we did a pretty good job as a whole, as a team.
Yeah, I would agree.
Would you say that there was any lack of trust? Did we all trust each other?
Yeah, I don't. I wouldn't say there was a lack of trust. I think going into it, we all sort of were just doing the simulation. Wouldn't really say that any of our positions really made us more trustworthy in any aspect of the climb. Like I was a photographer, it wouldn't have made me any better, more trustworthy going up, helping get to camp 4 or something like that. So no real lack of trust there, I don't think.
Any real fear of conflicts or any problems that we might have come across? We just had our own.
Well, there was
really,
I think there was conflict. There was.
Well, the fear was
We weren't exactly scared to if one of us had a conflicting interest, we weren't scared to voice that we had.
Right. Because we each had different goals. We let that be known.
You had to get all 5 of us to summit, and it was
Right.
well, okay, that's not.
And
gonna
that's
happen.
not going to happen.
Right.
And we kind of
There's
came
no-
to we faced that.
After we went up to
early
the
on.
first day,
Yeah.
after we went up to camp 1, we realized that we weren't all going to
Yeah.
make it.
Yeah,
to
because
Yeah.
you were
summit.
already weak.
Yeah,
and-
exactly.
Yeah, we weren't
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
didn't dance around it really. We kind of
yeah, I mean, everyone made
We
a
weren't
compromise.
afraid to
Address conflicts.
address
We-
conflict.
Yeah.
Exactly.
As
Everybody-
they came up, we
Yeah.
talked things through.
So
As for lack of commitment, it's basically like what they were saying. We initially said that we were all going to go to the summit, even though some of our goals only said that we were that we should go to the summit, and others said that it's like your top priority to go to the summit. But and then we realized at base camp or camp 1 that we had other more important goals.
Yeah, we just couldn't really all commit to
yeah,
making
we had
it to the
different
summit.
commitments.
In terms of some of the accountability amongst the team, it was hard for the physician or the doctor because he unfortunately got rescued, which means he couldn't supply anything to the remaining two, the marathon runner and the team leader, trying to make it up the mountain. And then on top of that, also unfortunately the marathon runner who was meant to interpret the weather got the interpretation wrong a couple times, which might have led to a little bit of frostbite. But she stepped up to it, so that's fine. There's no really avoidance of accountability there. We all sort of took account for all the mistakes that we made, and that kind of led us to think of how we could do it differently, and hopefully work better together next time if we were trying to do it. Any intention to results, really?
I
I'd
think
say-
we were all pretty focused on the results with our goals.
Yeah, I mean, like I would say, like we weren't all completely group oriented. Like we weren't all worried about making it to the summit together. It was more like, oh, let's just get our individual goals done.
Yeah.
Which I guess is attention to our own results and not so much worrying about the
The
group.
group results, yeah.
So in that sense, we weren't that effective, but
But we also
Some
did
of us
realize
got our
that we
goals.
did need to communicate in
Yeah.
order to reach our individual
yeah,
goals.
we had to,
And so we worked. So if our group goal was to communicate well, I think we accomplished that.
Yeah,
We
for
accomplished
sure.
that, yeah.
But we didn't accomplish the reaching the summit.
yeah.
So do you guys want to talk about like our general experience as a group?
Yeah. Initially we just started with the contracts. That was kind of just throwing together all the stuff that we thought was most important. If you're not going to make it to the meeting or anything that we set, have valid reasons why you're not going to come. Make sure you're active in the group message. You're communicating to everyone else in the group. You let them know what's happening. That was essentially the main things from our contract, just to make sure that everyone actually showed up and worked their best to make sure that the group gets the results that we need.
And as for like planning and coordination, like we communicated through group text and through emails, and we talked about when we're going to meet and where we're meeting in Norland, in the yellow room, and we picked like the recitation time because it just worked for everyone. And we coordinated on that. We made sure to like set reminders to bring everyone's just bring laptops, and I also had like an agenda plan before we came in, and I went over that with the group as soon as we sat down.
I thought it was interesting how when we first sat down, we were 5 people who hadn't really talked to each other before, and then we were thrown into this group, and we were set with the challenge to find a time to meet together that worked and finish the simulation and do these assignments that went along with the simulation. I thought we really came together as one and were able to get them done in a timely manner and efficiently.
I think like in the grand scheme, we're in the beginning of our group development because we're going to be in the same group for the whole semester. So I think this was like sort of a starting point to like feel it out, and
And now we know each other.
yeah, now we know each other's like tendencies and stuff,
Yeah.
and like how so, or at least better.
Yeah.
So we're developing.
Any other comments?
Yeah, no,
So
it was
that's about
good.
it, really.
Yeah, it was.
Super fun,
Yeah, it's really,
Really
cold up here. in
interesting,
Yeah.
Vancouver.
riveting.